Hey, this is Wei. So for this video, I'm going to be doing a shading demonstration in real time. And as I'm doing it, I'll talk about the different strokes I'm using to do the shading and just different kind of line work. And another thing I want to talk about is, which is really important, is the tip of your pencil. And there's a certain technique that you have to use in order to make your shading and line work consistent. So I'll be talking about that too. So let's get started. Right, so I'm going to quickly sketch this. Doesn't really have to be exact, but I want to get it a little bit close. Okay, so I got my little sketch here, and what I'm using is just basically a 2B graphite pencil. So to start, I like to start off in the darker areas because at the beginning you're usually a little bit rusty. You tend to make more mistakes. So in the darker area, you're at least you know that you're not gonna go too dark. So I just start off there. I'm just starting some dark areas, and then right here, just kind of shade it in. Yeah, just to get things started. I know it looks really rough right now, but that's generally how a drawing starts. Because you gotta put in some kind of value at the beginning in order to get the other, all the other values down. So here I'm drawing this crease, or this dark area right here. Okay. So with these strokes, you can see how I'm kind of it's kind of like cross hatching. I'll start off in one direction and I'll go into another direction, just to even things out so that you don't get too many directional lines going into one direction. Just shading things in. Okay, so right here I'm gonna make it a lot darker. This area right here kind of pinches in. Those are really, those are kind of areas that it's kind of dark and sharp, and it's going to draw your eye to it. So it's important to get those areas nice and dark. So you can see these brush strokes I'm using, it's just kind of like this, right? Just very fast. Just keep it loose. Here. So I got one direction here, so I'm going to go into another direction. Kind of even things out a little bit. So like these strokes right here, I'm going like this. Okay, just kind of like really lightly. So that's what I'm doing there. So I'll put this a little darker. Okay, so let me put this edge right here, since this is going to be pretty much pure black. Shading here. So you see how messy this area is, and that's that's why you want to start in the darker areas, because you tend to mess up. I mean, unless you have a lot of warm up and stuff, which I didn't for this video. Okay. So it's kind of getting there, right? I mean, it's messy, but you gotta start somewhere. So these larger areas, it's the same thing, right? You're just doing larger strokes. That's all. It's if you keep the lines longer, it's better. Generally better than having two separate small areas like that. So trying to go as long as you can, but keep it light. Keep your pencil really loose. I mean. Here, so like this little area. Once you start doing this, you start to read into the shape more. As you get into it, you can see that this area right here is a little bit darker. Those little areas are a little bit harder to catch at the beginning. And that's why you want to, you know, start out somewhere and start laying in the values. That way, you know, you have things to compare to, and that's really what how the shapes will come to be, is just by comparison with other shapes. And that's the reason why, you know, you don't want to concentrate in one area too long, because you really don't know how dark that area is, right? Until you compare it with the other values. Okay, so here I'll draw a little line here for the vein, right? So it pops out a little bit, so that's why this area is a little bit darker. Now this edge is really dark. I'm just gonna shade it in. Again, if you're not sure, it's better to go lighter and then, you know, go in again later to make it darker than you know, going too dark and then having to erase, which is something you don't want to do when you're sketching, because it actually changes the paper quality, the texture quality of the paper. So you see how I'm spinning around, you know, to get the cross hatching. For this purpose, I'm just spinning my hand because I don't want to move the paper too much. But normally, you know, you can spin the paper around if you want. I mean, people do that all the time. Okay. So now you kind of, you know, it's really light, obviously, but now you're starting to get the shape, right? So now just fill in some large areas. So here are some other strokes that you can use in shading instead of just lines. You can actually do little curly shapes. You know, they work pretty well. So if you do enough of them, they all kind of even things out. So now you see this big highlight there, you know. You want to kind of leave that area alone, or, you know, leave it light enough so that you can erase some of the pencil mark off if you need it to. Okay. All right, so here, you know, now we have some, you know, just laying down some basic values for the arm. And let me pause here for a second about the pencil tip as you're sketching. This is quite important. And I don't know if you've noticed that when I'm drawing, you see that I'm kind of turn the pencil once in a while as I'm sketching. And that's because, like, if you keep shading with one edge, right, you see how it gets softer and softer, because, you know, this one area it's just, this one tip is just getting flatter and flatter. So you want to, you know, just turn it once in a while, just so that, you know, you don't get this huge wedge or flat area on your pencil. So as I turn it, you can see that the lines become a lot sharper, right? So that's something to keep in mind as you're sketching. You know, when it gets a little bit kind of too dull, or, you know, you want it a little bit sharper, just kind of slowly turn it a little bit. And then on the, you know, first few strokes, just be careful, because the pencil tip is really sharp now. So if you go too hard, you're going to end up doing a really harsh line. So as I'm sketching, you see that, you know, I'll keep doing, once in a while, I'll spin it around a little bit, keeping in mind that, you know, the tip is very sharp at that point. So, and you can actually use it to your advantage, so that, you know, let's say, you know, you want to do some sharp lines. So, you know, you just turn the pencil a little bit, and now you guys have a little sharper edge. So that's a very useful technique. I think almost all artists do, you know, to their pencils. So you just kind of keep rotating it. So now, you know, I'm just gonna keep going. And I can't really go too dark with this, because this is a 2B pencil, but there's still some room where I can push it a little bit further. So I'm just gonna quickly rough it in. Okay, so here I shaded in some more, you know, spend another 5-10 minutes on it. You know, same thing with a 2B pencil. And now, you know, you can start seeing the forms a lot better. You know, it's just matching up the shape, and you can start to feel, you know, how round some areas are. So, you know, you just keep going. You know, at this point it's actually pretty fun, because, you know, you have the base work already, and now you're just kind of, you know, going in and you know, really defining the form. Now, if I wanted to make this kind of edge, even darker or whatever, I'll just bring in a 4B, and then, that way you can get some darker lines if you want to, just to give you the a wider range of values, to help better even define the forms better. So you can do that if you like. It all depends on preference. How dark you want it, or how realistic you want this to be. So I hope you enjoyed this little sketching demonstration, and I will see you next time.